Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Frank Baker, the moderator of our Candidates Forum for the candidates in District 38 to represent us in the Oklahoma House of Representatives. This is being simulcast. You're seeing it on Channel 11, the Enid Television Network, and that's on TV, obviously, and on radio, KGWA AM 960. I want to thank all the people making this evening's forum possible. Hopefully, this will be very informative for the voters of District 38. I want to thank our sponsors, which include the City of Enid, Enid News and Eagle, Eagle Marketing, Enid Television Network, Williams Broadcasting, and Chisholm Trail Broadcasting. First off, let's meet our media panelists and our timekeeper bouncer, as I always like to refer to that person. First off, and we'll just go from left to right, we have J. Curtis Huckleberry, the news director of Williams Broadcasting. And next to him, Rob Collins, the executive editor of the Enid News and Eagle. And then John Herrick, the news director of Chisholm Trail Broadcasting. And the small person next to John is Rebecca McKinney, and she's got a very important job here. She's like the timekeeper of this. So, Rebecca, if you would, shall we show them when we get down to 30 seconds left in a statement or answer to a question, your caution sign, 30 seconds left. But then when you hit your allotted time, this goes up. Stop. We've kept it very basic. And if a ruckus breaks out, Rebecca is the designated enforcer, so she'll take care of us. We've got her. I want to thank her for helping us out this evening. And now let's meet the candidates, and they will start from my right, and we'll go all the way around and introduce them, and then we'll go to their opening statements in just a moment. We have first off Harold LaValle and Jason Warren, and then Ralph Mead. And then we'll swing on around to the other side. And first off, that will be Roy Cheney, and then John Pfeiffer, and finally, Nikki Schrader. Those are our 6 candidates for District 38. Now, the way we'll operate this is we'll start with opening statements. We drew numbers before we started, so from my right around the horn, you're left out there in TV land, we'll be starting with number 1, which in this case will be Harold LaValle, and then we'll move around throughout the entire 6 candidates for 2-minute opening statements. Then we'll return for questions from our media panel. We'll start with J. Curtis Huckleberry, and his first question will go to Jason Warren, number 2 in the rotation. But first off, we'll start with our first 2-minute opening statement with Harold LaValle. Harold?
I am Harold LaValle. I'm from Bremen, up by the state line there on I-35. I lived in the district all my life and been involved in agriculture all my life. I have been in teaching, education. I was a coach, a teacher, administrator for almost 30 years, retired at the end of last school year, and was principal there at Blackwell when I retired. I am pro-life. I am opposed to Obamacare. Don't see how that will ever work. And I do support the Second Amendment. And education, I think that and agriculture are my strong points, where I've been in them for so long. We definitely need some changes in education right now. And that's it.
Thank you, Harold. Next opening statement from Jason Warren. Jason?
I'm Jason Warren. I live in Deer Creek, Grant County. I've always lived in the district, worked here as well. I've worked on the farm when I was 13 and got my first job for a non-family member. I worked there until I was 22, and then I started working at Asbury Machine, Troop Rock Bit, and Tonkawa. We primarily build drilling equipment, drilling bits. I'm a hard-working man and just an average Joe, you could say. I'm opposed to Obamacare as well. It's a bad deal. It's going to be hard to get rid of, but we can do it. I was really happy to see that Common Core is no longer in Oklahoma for now. Hopefully it doesn't come back under a different name. I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment, and that includes access to ammunition. I mean, it's too hard to find 22 shells now, so we need to make some changes there. States' rights are probably the key of my campaign, because states' rights really is the checks and balances system that's been disabled, and we need to get that going again. The states need to say no to the federal government. So that's a huge deal, and I want, if elected, I'll submit legislation that you want, as long as it's constitutional and necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Next, opening statement from Ralph Mead. Ralph?
Yes, I am Ralph Mead. I'm a common sense conservative Republican. I'm here with my wife Janie tonight. We've been married for 34 years. We have 2 daughters, 1 son-in-law, and we're expecting our first grandchild. We're excited. We live on our farm there in Grant County, 5 miles from where my great-grandparents homesteaded in 1893 to settle the Cherokee Strip. I am a Christian, and I attend the First Baptist Church there in Medford. I attended Oklahoma State University and am a member of Ag Leadership Oklahoma. I have been a conservative Republican for 31 years. I'm a farmer and I'm a businessman. In my career in agriculture, I've raised enough wheat to make 90 million loaves of bread and enough cattle to make 6 million pounds of beef. We also have the Oklahoma Land Office there in Medford, a real estate company. While growing our farm and our business, we've made payrolls, we've paid taxes, we've worked extensively on budgeting, accounting, short and long-range planning, and marketing, and we've dealt with a whole lot of different government agencies. I've served on many boards, the Oklahoma Wheat Growers, the Grant County Farm Bureau. I've testified before the U.S. Senate Ag Committee. I've served as chairman of Governor Keating's Biofuels Feasibility Committee. I'm a member of the American Farmers and Ranchers, and I'm a member of the NRA. I'm a common sense conservative Republican, and I am prepared to be your representative.
All right, thank you, Ralph. Next, opening statement from Roy Cheney. Roy?
My name is Roy Cheney. I'm a lifelong Oklahoman. I have lived in the district 34 years this summer. I'm a lifelong educator, 42 years. Worked for 3 common ed schools, from teacher, junior high principal, high school principal, athletic director, director of special ed, director of federal programs, assistant superintendent. And then 24 years ago, I had the opportunity to work at Northern Oklahoma College and finished that up and retired in May. I have taught at all campuses here in Enid for NOC. It's been an enrichment for me. My wife Nancy and I have hit the campaign trail hard, knocking on over 2,000 doors, and I haven't kept track of the miles, but this is a big district, as we've all found out. We have 2 sons and 5 great grandkids. I'm a graduate of Oklahoma State University with a BS and an MS. I'm a strong advocate for the Constitution as a government teacher for the past 24 years and history teacher. I know how it should work and how it has failed in the past administration in Washington. We need strong voices here in Oklahoma, particularly for rural Oklahoma. And I feel that I am prepared to be that voice. Education, agriculture, and highways are my 3 main areas. I make very few promises other than one: to always listen to the citizens of the district with respect and reply to them and be the representative for all citizens. Thank you.
Thanks, Roy. Next, opening statement from John Pfeiffer. John?
Like you said, my name's John Pfeiffer. I'm from Mulhall, Oklahoma. Grew up down there, 5th-generation farmer. My family's been raising Angus cattle in Mulhall, Orlando area since 1907. So I did all the fun stuff in high school, 4-H and FFA, basketball, till I realized I wasn't tall enough or very good. And they told me to concentrate on my FFA pursuits because I was a lot better at that. Doing that, I won the Northwest District Star Farmer Award there in FFA back in 2004. After that, I went to Oklahoma State University for a while as a member of the 2007 livestock judging team. After Oklahoma State University, I left and joined the United States Marine Corps and was in the Marine Corps for 4.5 years and deployed to Afghanistan back in 2011. I think this is a great opportunity for all of us and for me to really continue on with my service, but something where I can really focus on rural Oklahoma. Rural Oklahoma has its own unique set of challenges and upside that a lot of these people up in Oklahoma City and Tulsa and some of these bigger cities just don't necessarily understand. And they take It takes somebody from rural Oklahoma to bring their point of view and bring their point of view up there and fix the problems we have. So, thank you.
Thank you, John. Final opening statement from Nikki Schrader. Nikki?
Thank you. My name is Nikki Schrader. My husband is Dr. Schrader, the cardiologist here in Enid, which makes me very marketable as far as representing doctors and the medical issues that seem to be going on with Obamacare, which we seem to live on a daily basis. We also have 4 children. We've been married for 23 years. I put a few more years on there. 23 years, and they've been wonderful. We've had 4 amazing kids. 4 of they all 4 are in different stages of the academic endeavors that they're in. I am an educator, and we have homeschooled. We have had kids in public school and also in private school. So I'm well versed in all the different educational opportunities and choices out there. So I'm very much for academic choice. I'm very much interested in making sure that we allow parents and allow the educators and the teachers to meet the needs of those kids instead of trying to make it a bureaucratic implementation. I was born and raised on a farm. My husband and I both were. We continue to carry on that legacy with our kids. Hence the fact they're out looking for a couple cattle right now. So, it's one of those things that there's never a dull moment on the farm, and there's always a lot of problem solving that goes along with it. So I wish every family could experience that, but I think that's something that we all bring to the table as far as loving rural Oklahoma and wanting to bridge that gap and allowing Oklahoma City and those that don't get to enjoy the opportunities out here in rural Oklahoma to see it and to see our needs and to understand our needs as well. So anyway, I look forward to serving you in the next couple of years.
All right, Nikki, thank you very much. Opening statements from our candidates for District 38 of the Oklahoma House. We now go to the question and answers segment. This is being brought to you on Enid Television Network, Channel 11 on the Suddenlink system and KHWA AM 960. We'll continue our rotation with the questions. First question from J. Curtis Huckleberry, News Director of Williams Broadcasting, going first to Jason Warren, and then we'll go 2, 3, and throughout the rest of the rotation after that. So, Jason and J. Curtis.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you to all of our candidates for joining us tonight, making yourself and your views available to the voters within your district. Question number 1, speaking of the district, District 38 represents parts of several different counties, and it is rather diverse, from the parts of eastern Enid, more urban, to some very rural areas. I would like each candidate's thoughts on, do you see there being particularly any obstacles trying to represent all of the district and the citizens? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a great question. You do have some urban areas, but it's mostly rural. So there's so many thousands of square miles of farmland. I wish I knew the exact number, and there's a lot of drilling going on, and so it's difficult to do that. But I'm a working guy, and I've been out in this district the whole time, and so I just feel like I know the people pretty well, and I'm an approachable guy. I've worked alongside so many of them. It's hard to represent an area this size, 38,000 people in a 5-county area. So basically, I'll have my phone available, and I'd love to hear from everyone. Thank you.
Jason, thank you. Same question for Ralph Mead. Ralph?
Well, District 38 is very diverse. We cover parts of 5 counties. Not only do we have Enid on our doorstep, we also have Ponca City, a community of almost equal size. We also have Guthrie, and we have close to 1,500 voters in Guthrie, Oklahoma. And of course, Guthrie's pretty large. The important thing that we have here at Enid is we have the industrial base of Enid to the east side of 30th Street. And of course, that's part of our district, and that's very, very, very important. Industry, agriculture, and our energy are what drives the state of Oklahoma. And as Jason said, it's important. These drilling that's going on is very important. I don't see a problem with the people. I visited with folks, in every part of the district. I see no difference. We're all Oklahomans. Not much difference there.
Same question for Roy Cheney. Roy?
Yes, I agree with that statement Mr. Mead made, that in visiting with the citizens of the district, they have many of the common concerns that we all have. As an educator, I have dealt in classrooms with people from very urban areas, from the very rural areas that are, even in a class of 40 seem to be much larger than their school. And so it's important to be able to deal with individuals at their level, to be responsive and to listen and to provide the information that they need. When you don't have the answer, you find the answer for them. So I believe that it's an honor to represent all the people of District 38.
Thank you. And John, I've got to stop for just a second. I think I may have mispronounced the last name. Is the P silent, or are you pronouncing the P on Pfeiffer?
I pronounce it Pfeiffer, but I'll answer to just about anything.
No, I'm going to go with the way you pronounce your name. So, John Pfeiffer, your response.
I think, like everybody said, I think it's important to remember that across the state, and especially in the times like these, everybody's concerns, whether they're from a rural area or an urban area, are all pretty much the same. They want to see the same things fixed. They want to see their schools in better shape, whether there's, the numerous number of schools in Enid or the single schools in these rural communities. Everybody wants better roads. So, the problems we all face are a lot the same. And I think it's important to work with some of these bigger communities and keep in mind that a lot of these larger communities are helping these small communities, because this is where they go. This is where they go for employment. This is where we go for milk. Where I live in Mulhall, Orlando, and a lot of places throughout the district, you've got to drive 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes sometimes to get a gallon of milk. So it's important to work with these urban areas and keep them providing, the opportunity for employment and services that the rural areas need, and at the same time, fixing the problems that can benefit all Oklahomans. Roads and schools are definitely a big one. Thank you.
And the next answer to the question from Nikki Schrader. Nikki?
All right. I agree also with Ralph said, as far as there's not a lot of difference between the desires and the needs of rural Oklahoma and urban Oklahoma. But I think one thing that's important is a lot of times I think there's a lot of misconceptions that go on, both from urban and rural. Sometimes what rural people think is going on in, Enid or urban, urban settings, or vice versa, and what their needs and desires are, or the intelligence level, or whatever that might be. And so I think that that's something that we need to make sure that we bridge that gap and let them know that, on both sides, we're here to work together. We're here as Oklahomans. In order for us to be a productive town of Enid, we need to be embracing our rural heritage and the rural community, as well as, the rural needs to embrace the urban, just like what he said with the shopping and all that, and know that we, in Enid, we offer a great service, as well as really fun shops and stuff down like in Guthrie and stuff. Guthrie's got some amazing little stores and stuff, and all these little towns have some really fun things. So I think it's important we bring together and unify rather than try to, pull ourselves apart. So.
And the final answer to this question goes to Harold LaValle. Harold?
There is differences between the city and out in the country. Like out in rural, Bremen has a little over 200 people, and here in Enid there's thousands. But as far as the ones we represent, we don't represent the ones that are right in Enid or right in Guthrie or right in Ponca City. But we still need good education for the ones outside of town as the ones that are in the bigger cities. We still need good roads that go into those cities just for the economy, if nothing else. And then a lot of people that have lived in the city in the past have moved out into the rural areas. They drive back into the city to work. They drive back into the city to shop, go to church, everything. So it's not, what differences there are, there's probably a whole lot more similarities, because it would be hard for one to exist without the other.
You're watching and listening to a candidates forum for the candidates for Oklahoma House District 38 on KGWA AM 960 and Channel 11 Enid Television Network. Next question comes from the executive editor of the Enid News and Eagle, Rob Collins, and it will go first to candidate Ralph Mead. Rob?
What is your political philosophy, and if you disagree with the constituent, how do you vote?
Well, I'm a conservative, common-sense Republican. I believe in our natural God-given rights. I believe in personal responsibility. I believe economic liberty is the cornerstone of liberty. And I don't, being a Republican, I started out as a Democrat like many people did. I had a high school English teacher that got a lot of us to help with then Governor Hall, and of course he was put in prison. We also had a president who was a good peanut farmer, and I watched my wheat price fall from $4.75 to $1.60, and I was paying attention. I converted immediately. I am pro-life, and I believe that marriage should only be a traditional marriage between one man and one woman. And I'm not going to change, and I'm going to vote for the values and beliefs that I have. So if you elect me, I'm going to be pro-life. I'm going to believe in traditional marriage, and I'm not changing.
Same question for Roy Cheney. Roy?
Well, that's a good question, and I think as an educator, the way I would approach it is that you need to listen to all sides, but believing in the Constitution, we are a republic, and whoever's elected is the person that ultimately has the power to make that decision. I think you need to listen to all sides. As I said earlier, I think you need to look for information, gather it, decide, be responsible with that decision, tell the citizens, this is my decision and why it is. And I agree with Ralph, of course, as a Christian, there are certain key values that you're not ever going to go away from, but I think that is reflected in our district, and they would expect no less than that.
John Pfeiffer, your reaction.
I hate to just keep hammering this point home, but I too, I'm a constitutional conservative, very pro-life, believe in traditional marriage and all these things, which I think pretty much represents the values of all the people, in the District 38 for sure, and across Oklahoma. And I don't think, I don't think a lot of those things are going to come up before the Oklahoma State House, and if they do, I think the people, from my district would respect where I stand. And just keeping an open dialogue with somebody who disagrees with you or has varying viewpoints, I think is very important. And just letting people know where you stand up front. People respect people who can, stand up for what they believe in, do what they say, and I think that's important. Even if you disagree, there's been people I've disagreed with that stuck by their point and stood by their convictions, and I still respected them and respected their decision even though I disagreed with it, and I think that's what you have to do. Thank you.
Next response from Nikki Schrader. Nikki?
Excuse me, I agree with John. I have 4 teenage kids at my house, so there's a lot of dialogue that goes on, and a lot of times we don't necessarily agree on things, but because of that, we discuss things. I don't always see it from their point of view and vice versa, so that I think that's where it goes. When someone disagrees with something, I might, a direction they might think I'm going to vote, I would love for them to dialogue with me, talk to me, let me understand their side, their point of view, where they're coming from. But like the gentleman have said, I'm a constitutional conservative as well, and I am a born-again Christian. So I will stand by the beliefs, the core beliefs that I have. But in the same token, I need to know what they base their truth on. And they need to understand why I base my truth. And I think that when you understand where each other bases your truth, it's a lot easier to be respectful and to understand where it comes from. If it's just an emotion or something, it's a lot harder to argue with something like that. But if you have a basis for your truth, it's a lot harder to disagree with that, or at least to not have respect with that.
Okay, next answer from Harold LaValle. Harold?
I am a conservative. I think my values are very, very similar to those of the district. And if you've got one person or a very small group that is disagreeing with something that needs to be done or something that is an issue, you're still representing the whole district. So you've got to listen to all the people and not just one small group. And we still represent, like I say, everybody. But you can't, you've got to have strong enough values that you're not going to sell yourself out and go against those values because there is a small group that wants to change something.
And final answer to the question from Jason Warren. Jason?
Well, living in this district and talking with everybody, this is a very conservative district. Even the Democrats are very conservative. So my political philosophy has been a constitutional conservative, much like the others. I was endorsed by OCPAC as a conservative. That's Oklahoma Conservative Political Action Committee. I believe I'm the only candidate so far to be endorsed. As far as people that don't agree with you, you got to hear every side. You can't get a complete picture without hearing every side. But if elected, I'm going to vote my conscience as a Christian, and I would love to have a 100% conservative rating if I was elected. That would be my goal. Thank you.
Next question comes from the news director of Chisholm Trail Broadcasting, John Herrick, and will first be directed to Roy Cheney. John?
Well, guys, as Republicans, I'm sure you've all adopted conservative values. I've heard a lot of Republican candidates talk about conservative values, but in your minds, what do conservative values mean? What do they stand for?
I believe conservative values represent the core of America from our early history. As a history teacher, I think one of the issues that we have today is that we've lost our way at the federal level, and that makes it even more important for us here in Oklahoma that are holding to those values of family, religion, freedom, Second Amendment. I mean, the list is long and inclusive. Those are important values for Oklahomans, be they Republican or be they Democrat. And I think those are the values that we represent and that we are responsible as a representative to fight for those and to protect those rights and views.
And the same question for John Pfeiffer. John?
When I think of conservative values, break it down into a couple different segments. On the economic side, we have to be for small government. I know here in the state of Oklahoma, there's been a large push here recently to cut down on the number of unneeded state agencies or repetitive state agencies that we've continued to have that have just kind of got outdated with technology and time and growing things. We need to continue we need to continue to encourage business and industry to come here to Oklahoma, and we need to continue to stand for low taxes. On the other side of the spectrum, we have to stand, like Mr. Cheney said, for traditional family values, the stuff that most of us learned at home and at church. Traditional marriage, pro-life values, the things that really, hold a community together and just kind of act according to your faith. Thank you.
Next response from Nikki Schrader. Nikki?
I believe conservative values go hand in hand with our Constitution, which our Constitution was based off of, biblical values. And so I think part of our problem with America is we've swayed from the Constitution and we've also swayed from our biblical truth, which therefore makes a lot of things a lot harder to understand. Prime example, the marriage issue, gay marriage and just traditional marriage. It leaves for a lot of confusion even amongst the young kids, which now has become a topic that we have to teach in a school. What does marriage look like? Where before that, everyone knew. So I think that as things become more gray, it adds more confusion to our country and what our country stands for, and therefore ultimately makes us a weaker country. So I think we really need to stand true to what our faith is. We need to stand true to what our Constitution is and what it was based on. And I think in a nutshell, that's, I guess, what a conservative is someone who follows the Constitution.
And the same question for Harold LaValle.
I think it goes along with pro-life, Christian beliefs, strong Christian beliefs, pro-Second Amendment, traditional marriage, limited government, and strong education with strong local control. And I think those are just some of the high points.
Jason Warren, your response.
Well, they've pretty well covered all the bases. Limited government, Christian values, being a conservative, that's basically the core of it. I mean, I think that really covers it.
Final answer to the question from Ralph Mead. Ralph?
What are conservative values? Well, to me, it's faith, it's family, it's limited government, individual liberty, our natural God-given rights, and personal responsibility. You know, the free market principles have always been, and capitalism have always been, the engine that has driven economic development. It's not been more government programs. Those together were what the founding fathers were talking about in the Constitution. There were no government programs. It was our individual liberty and our personal responsibility. And that's what grew this nation. And it was those conservative values. And those are what I hold dear to my heart.
Thank you, Ralph. Our next question comes as we go back through the rotation in the media panel from J. Curtis Huckleberry, News Director for Williams Broadcasting, first directed to candidate John Pfeiffer.
Candidates, what I would like to know is your philosophy on balancing the need for funding for the state programs and agencies as opposed to the expressed desire by many in the Republican Party for reductions, particularly in personal income tax rates. So where do you stand on that issue? What would your approach? What type do you support?
Like you said, it definitely is a very difficult balancing act. You know, and what we need is the right size of government that works for us, not all the government we can afford to pay for. You know, the governor has done a really good job of sizing down the state government and trying to modernize it. There hadn't been a lot of push here until recently to do away with some of these outdated programs and things like that, so we can concentrate the money that we do have and the money we can generate and to servicing the programs that do work and that we do need and that we do need to continue to function as a state. And we just recently had a personal income tax reduction. I think that's great. I think it'll drive and bring people into the state, continue to drive industry. At the same time, we kind of have to balance the different tax rates, whether it be gross production tax, and find different sources of revenue. You know, without stifling the continued growth of business. There's been some places where we can look at possibly raising taxes to keep personal income taxes and personal property taxes low that we have to look at, and we kind of have to look at the whole picture and balance it and find out what we need to increase the amount of revenue we do have to pay for the programs we do need, not all the programs we have right now.
And the same question for Nikki Schrader.
The old Chinese proverb says, teach a man to fish and he'll fish for a lifetime. Give a man a fish and you'll feed him forever. that's pretty much what our country has started to do. We have made people dependent on the government and dependent on that for their livelihood and what to do. And I really think that instead of having so many programs where we just hand things out, we need to start teaching them skills. That should be going on in the prisons. That should be going on, especially in the juvenile detention centers. Those kids have plenty of opportunities of things that they could do, that we need to allow kids to actually be able to explore and learn how to do things rather than continually setting up new stipulations that don't allow kids to work and do the things that we used to do when we were kids in order to develop that work ethic. Because I see a decrease in work ethic amongst generations. I mean, you just continually see that. I mean, you look at our veterans, our World War II veterans, all the way down to, you know, my children even, and the work ethic from those that came over to the kids now is a lot different. And part of that is our fault as a state and as parents, not allowing those kids to experience things. The state income tax, they're going to get their money one way or another. And that whole thing worries me because it's going to end up going to property taxes. It's going to go on companies. Somehow they're going to get their money. And I would love it if they would just completely skim down all the programs and we would live, within our means. And I would definitely be one of those that would be trying to support the smaller government.
The response of Harold LaValle. Harold?
Well, I think we do have to have limited government, and I think we've got to take care of what we've got. In a perfect world, we probably wouldn't even have taxes. But we can't keep lowering taxes and take care of what we've got, whether it's roads, education, corrections, whatever it is. We've still got to have the money there to take care of it at a level that it needs to be at. We do need, like I say, the limited government. Some of the programs, and I'm not sure programs is the word for it, but some of them have been consolidated in the last few years to make a little bit less government. Now, when they were consolidated, I don't know that they made all of it smaller or they just put all of the same people under one umbrella, but it looked good. So, there's got to be other ways out there to bring in revenue, but we still have to take care of what we have.
Same question for Jason Warren.
Well, the powers of the federal government, the things that, they're too big. It's not the state government that's too big. I'd like to see the state stop working as a tax collector for the federal government. We should increase the state's agencies and get rid of federal agencies, because when you have a problem with the local government, you can go somewhere and talk to somebody. You can't go to Washington, D.C. and make any changes. I mean, you have to take off work. So by reasserting the 10th Amendment, send those powers back to the state and to the people. So basically, I would be for a higher personal income tax in Oklahoma, but work to eliminate the federal income tax. And so I think that was the way to go. We need the states to be stronger. That way we can stand up to the tyranny that's going on today. I mean, whether it be from the IRS, these agencies, they're not just attacking pro-life groups or Tea Party groups. I live in Deer Creek, Oklahoma, Grant County, 163 people. We have a local food bank that's under attack by the IRS. I mean, how far do these tentacles go? And we can't stop them if we don't make our state stronger. That's my main thing.
Ralph Mead, your reaction.
Philosophy. The needs of the state are great, but we have to educate our kids. We have to pay for corrections. As you know, we had a big shortfall this year. And we have to pay for law enforcement. We have a lot of other agencies that are a big drain. But we have to take care of our citizens. The USDA this year, under Frank Lucas, came out with a new pilot program that will take people off of food stamps. These are able-bodied people that can work, that should be working. And here in Oklahoma, we have jobs to work. And that's the first step, is we've got to teach people how to work, get them off of the government dole, and that would be a good thing. As far as the reduction in the income tax, we just passed gross production tax of 2%. It seems to me we could have done a little bit more negotiating than that. I would like to see everybody's taxes to be kind of across the board. It may be that we could have come up a little there and down a little over here on the income tax to make everybody paying the same. That's important, is that everybody has the same amount of skin in the game, as it were.
And the final response to the question from Roy Cheney. Roy?
Jay, I think you've hit on one of the more complicated issues that anyone has that has to make these decisions, because as you've heard, it is a balancing act. For example, if I was in the legislature this year, I would have supported the governor's compromise with the legislature to cut the income tax because it was tied to future economic growth. That I could accept. I agree with Mr. Mead. In actuality, and I certainly would in no way want to jeopardize the oil boom that is happening, but I've lived through it before. Booms do burst. Oil companies have to come where there's oil. I mean, the bottom line. And when you put in the vertical exemption that they were paying 7% and now pay 2%, they got a tax break unreal. That's where I would like to do a study and find out. There are so many exemptions handed out as gifts to these powerful lobbying groups that I don't want to be beholden to any group. I want to look at, and if it encourages the economy, I can support it. But if not, that's where you could raise money to pay the bills.
Thank you, Roy. Next question comes from Rob Collins with the News and Eagle, directed first to Nikki Schrader. Rob?
How would you improve the educational system in Oklahoma?
I think there's various ways you can do that. They've done a good job with having the online schools that they can do. I think that they've also done a great job allowing homeschool families to homeschool and not have restrictions on them. I've seen some very amazing homeschool families, so I think that's a very viable option. I've also seen some great charter schools. And as far as rural Oklahoma goes, I think that we need to somehow figure out, kind of like what the men have said as far as the oil companies, help them to be responsible for the small communities in which they're drilling in, to help those local communities and those schools thrive. Because since we do have such small numbers, we don't get the income that we need in order to make the school function in the way it needs to function. It basically covers your building expenses and a little bit more. So we need to find a way that we can bring some revenue in order to help those schools. I've also seen schools work where in the really small schools it doesn't work, but in a little bit larger school, in some of our districts, it would work to have two types of learning styles within the same school, whether you have one teacher follow a group K through 3, and then he or she follows them the rest of the way, but allows them to have two different types of learning styles to choose from, because no child learns the same as another. So it gives them options when they live in rural Oklahoma, instead of just having whatever everyone else has, just the traditional learning style. So I think there's a lot of good things that are going on in Oklahoma, and I think that there's a lot of room for change that I think teachers are excited to see what they can actually be allowed to implement in.
And the same education question for Harold LaValle. Harold?
I think the testing, we've got way too much testing. We need to back off on that. We've used the ACT and the SAT for years, and that's what students have to use to get into college if they're going. If they're not going to college, there is a Work Keys or Key Train program that they can go through. Then they take a test in it, and it helps place them in different jobs. They can take that certificate and go to their employer and say, this is where I will fit in your company. A lot of the company, I say a lot, there are big companies now that are using that. If you go to them and apply for a job, you have to take that test, and then they use that to help place you. I think we've got some excellent teachers in Oklahoma, but if we continue on the road we're on, we're going to keep losing teachers. We've got shortages in math and science now, and that is going to keep going into the other areas. So we've got to be able to fund it a little better to work on that.
Next response from Jason Warren.
Well, to start, we need to reassert states' rights and stop listening to the Federal Department of Education. local people know what's best. The Department of Education, they've had a goal of getting rid of God and prayer from our schools. We need to return to that. You know, those moralities are important. So basically, by stop taking money from the Department of by stop sending money to the federal government, we'll have more money for our teachers in education because we'll keep it in-house. You know, we send money out to the federal government and then we beg to get a certain percentage back. By keeping it, we maintain our power. I also support the voucher system. I think this will guarantee our small schools will stay open and allow free market competition. It'll also help homeschoolers, because right now, if you homeschool, you're essentially being punished because you pay the same amount for education, but you don't get anything out for books and all that stuff. So that's basically my views there. Thank you.
Same question for Ralph Mead.
Improving schools, you know, we'll start with funding. Revenue for our public schools, 46% comes from ad valorem taxes, as most of you probably know. The rest comes from most of the rest of it comes from the state. We get a small portion from the feds. We've done away with Common Core. We will set up Oklahoma standards, and those standards will be rigorous. There will be testing, hopefully with number 2 lead pencils. You know, they don't break down quite as much as the computers at some schools. But we will, and it'll take a lot of input from our school boards, our parents, and from our communities. Now, for District 38, you have to understand we're not in Enid. We graduated 7 from one of our schools this year. We graduated 65 from the largest school in our district. I caught Janet Barisi the other day here in Enid, and I explained to her that these schools she wants are wonderful, and they will work perfectly in larger communities, but they won't work with 7 kids. You can't have a charter school with 7 kids. Not going to work. But what I told her is what I want is I want the opportunity for my kids in every school in the state of Oklahoma to have an opportunity to take the physics, if that's what it needs to be, the AP courses, and use the virtual school to get a great education for everybody. And we have to set our kids up for success and not for failure.
The education question for Roy Cheney. Roy?
Well, I believe if you ask any educator, the number one success of a student is parental involvement. And the schools seem to have, not deliberately, I do not believe, but somehow through administrative decree, we've cut them out. We've got to get them back. We've got to get parental involvement. If the parent is involved in their child's education, then they will be successful. And we need to give them every opportunity. One size does not fit all. I'm concerned about administrative cost in schools, and I have ideas that we could look at to see if they could be reduced even further, because the money needs to be with the students and the teacher in the classroom. We need to somehow fund better salaries and benefits for our educators. We're losing too many. I've seen it, Texas, Kansas, and I want to prove I'm not a politician, because basically I think in the last couple of years the failure is directly related to Janet Barisi. We need her out. We need someone that understands education and the students, and I think she's demonstrated, even from what she's advocating, failure. The grading system. Does anyone really understand what the letters mean? I've tried, I've read, it's convoluted. I agree that parents need to know how the school is performing. The teachers and the parents need to work together. That's the key.
And the final answer to the question from John Pfeiffer. John?
Well, this is something that we talk about at my home with my parents pretty much every night. My dad's a retired high school science teacher and retired principal. My mom sits on the school board, and my cousin Jolene's the current principal there at Mulhall, Orlando, which, boy, it used to not be very fun at all to get sent to the principal's office. But, you know, I think a big thing so this is something we talk about a lot. I think it's important to look at education and look in terms of funding to cut out a lot of the stuff that the state says we have to do, either in unfunded mandates or funded mandates. I mean, like Ralph said, we pay our property taxes, and then the state disperses it back to us with certain caveats, as it was, on how the individual schools, which are managed by school boards elected out of those communities, have to spend their money. If, without those caveats, the school boards, the superintendents, or principals are there, then would be able to incentivize math teachers, science teachers, and things like that to come to their schools. And that way we could start cutting down on this teacher shortage we have. I know it's said when Oklahoma State University only graduates 7 high school math teachers out of this year. And when you look at the number of position openings out there, there's not enough teachers to go along. We have to get back to where the local schools can start incentivizing teachers to come back out to where they need to teach.
Thank you, John. I want to thank you for listening and watching this candidate forum. All the candidates for Oklahoma House District 38. We'll move to our last question in just a moment, and then gentleman and lady following that. Then we'll go to our closing statements, and Jason, remember, we'll come to you first on the closing statement. But now the final question of the evening goes from our news director from Chisholm Trail Broadcasting, John Herrick, directed first to Harold LaValle. John?
Well, this is kind of a follow-up to Rob's question, guys. Which GOP candidate then would, for state superintendent for Oklahoma, would you support?
Right now, with what I know, I would support probably Hoffmeister. She is for less testing, and I visited with her just a few minutes, and like on the ACT and the SAT, at the end of the year, the students have got to take the EOIs, and there are 7 throughout high school that they have to pass. They have to pass 4 out of 7. But by using ACT test, that would get rid of at least 3 to 4 of those tests. If they can come up with a cutoff score. If you make so high on the ACT, then it's like passing the EOI. And if you're not going to college, they're going to have something else. But that, plus the fact that I think she has, being on the state board, I think she saw a lot of waste that went on when Barisi first came in, and I think she will work different on that.
Same question for Jason Warren.
I'm going to vote for Joy. Thank you.
Ralph Mead?
Well, I don't appreciate the question. As good Republicans, we're not supposed to talk bad about anybody. And that I have kind of always gone by that. I visited with Janet Barisi over here at Enid. Like I said, I asked her some very, very difficult questions. I asked her about the 3rd grade testing, explaining that when I was in high school and I took the ACT test, we had 1 shot. You took it 1 time. And now, of course, we take it many times, starting in the sophomore, junior, and senior year. That's true. And what that does is it gives the children the opportunity to improve themselves. On the 3rd grade testing, she explained to me that the material for the 3rd grade test was 1st grade material. I did not know that, had never heard it. So I asked her, you're the superintendent of public education, public instruction, why are we giving 3rd graders 1st grade tests and demanding that they pass it, and otherwise we're gonna flunk you? And she explained to me that the system wasn't working, and I explained to her that I felt like we should have at least 1 test a year to the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade on this same material, because I believe that any kid can read. It just takes a few minutes to sit down and work with them, and because of that, we have to set those kids up for success, starting immediately in the 1st grade and kindergarten. My time's up.
Okay. Roy Chaney, your reaction.
Well, I believe that Joy is the candidate. I have had the opportunity to visit with her on more than 1 occasion. She's been to Kay County. She's had the experience. She indicates that she is a educator that believes in parental involvement and choice. She supports the different avenues of education. And in my knowledge, it is unprecedented in the state of Oklahoma. I have never heard of a situation where 20 state representatives and senators, including our representative from District 38, endorsed her even before she announced. And once she did, that number grew to, I believe, close to 30 or more. And I agree with Mr. Mead. It is hurtful to break Mr. Reagan's rule. But there are situations when you see what is happening that you just cannot stand by and hope that it will continue. This is a major concern. In the district, I've had two main questions. One, about guns, but number two is the superintendent of schools. And as of yet, the dozens of people that have asked that question, when I said I oppose Janet Barisi, not one person has said I'm wrong. In fact, I've even been high-fived a couple of times. So I will stand with that, and I'm voting for Joy.
John Pfeiffer, your reaction.
I think the policies that Barisi's put in place have been extremely harmful to the rural schools and the way we do things. I think the lack of exceptions and the way she's treated special education in this state is almost to the point of being reprehensible. My younger brother was a special needs kid and had to be treated, and the number of special needs kids in the state of Oklahoma is growing, and we have to be able to provide those children with an education within their means, and that's something that she's really cut back on, and it's really frustrating. I'm supporting Joy. Thank you.
Final response to the question, Nikki Schrader.
All right, well, ultimately, the decision comes down to the voters. And so my response to your question is, I feel like I could work with either one of them. I think that Joy definitely has a lot of flexibility. I think she has a lot to offer. I think she has a lot to bring to the table. If the voters of Oklahoma vote in Janet Barisi again, which I don't think is even going to be an issue, but if it is, I feel like I could work with either one of them. And I think that's the key to solving the educational issues in the state. It's not fine if Barisi gets in, I'm not going to play. And that's, I think, a problem that we have in government is we don't play nice. And we have got to be able to play together, and we've got to figure out how to work out these problems and solutions together, because it's not going to go away just because the person I want to get in doesn't get in. I still have to be able to work as a representative for my district and make happen what we need to have happen. And in order to do that, I've got to be able to work with either one, whoever the state puts in there.
You're watching and listening to a candidates forum for candidates from the Oklahoma House District 38 race. We now go to our concluding statements in this evening's forum, and it's 90 seconds in length. We'll start first with Jason Warren. Jason?
Well, I've always been a small town kid. You know, I've gone to Deer Creek Lamont Public School, go to a small church in Narden. I work in a small factory. You know, this is a rural district. You know, it's very conservative, it's very rural. I'm a very conservative guy. If elected, I'm going to work to stop Obamacare from being implemented. That's a huge thing. I'll always be a supporter of the Second Amendment. We've got to work to make sure that they don't take away our rights. It's so important. I was opposed to Common Core from the start. Any federal top-down, one-size-fits-all scheme for education is never good. As you know, I'm for the elimination of the Department of Education. You know, the states' rights is going to become critical over the next decade. We need to stand up to these guys while we still can, because they're just getting so big. I would always work to submit legislation that you want that's constitutional and necessary. As a solid conservative, I will always protect your life, your liberty, and your property. It's very important to have personal responsibility as well. And lastly, I feel it's my civic duty to be up here and work. I mean, it takes a lot of time away from home and jobs and put a lot on the line. The Constitution is a divine document to me. It's not written by men, it was written through men. And when we honor it and enforce it, you know, we uphold it, we're honoring God. And thank you.
Final thoughts from Ralph Mead.
Thank you once again. Oklahoma is a great place to live, to work, and to raise a family. It's our home. It's where we raised our family, and we have our farm and our business. Being a lifelong Oklahoman, I have strong Oklahoma values. I believe in the strength of God and in faith, and I rely on these to guide me each and every day and every decision that I make. I believe in limited government, individual liberty, our natural God-given rights, and personal responsibility. I am pro-life. I believe only in traditional marriage, and I will protect our Second Amendment rights, and I will protect Oklahoma's rights from the intrusion from the federal government and the federal courts. I believe in excellence in the classroom because we have to have an educated workforce to attract the new businesses and also to continue the growth in Oklahoma for our children. District 38 is a rural district, and we need a representative that has the knowledge, the experience to make the right decisions on budgets and health care, education and transportation, our seniors' issues. We need a strong voice, and I will be that voice. I understand that each vote I take at the Capitol will affect every family in District 38, and I take that very, very seriously. I will always be available. I will always listen and be an advocate for your concerns and issues. I'm the only candidate that has the experience, the real-life, hands-on leadership skills to be your representative. I ask you for your vote on June the 24th, but much more than that, I ask you for your prayers.
Closing statement from Roy Chaney.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank everyone taking part, their questionnaires, and certainly the people that are listening on radio and watching on television. I'm sure there was some program probably more entertaining. And I would like to take a few seconds of my time to just, because this may be the last time I have a chance to say, as a government teacher, this is a life dream to run for state representative. I very much want to serve the district, but this has been a model of what an election should be. These men and lady, we have crisscrossed the district, we've knocked doors, we've visited, and this has always been nothing but positive from each of us. People appreciate that. I wish others would take our lesson. And I appreciate everyone running. I think we all give you a choice. It will be a hard decision. I believe I have served the public. I've been a city commissioner. I'm currently the mayor of Newkirk. I have dealt with budgets, school and public. I have the education. I have the experience as a government instructor. I know the Constitution. I believe I can go to Oklahoma City and immediately be an effective leader. We need a strong voice for the rural district of District 38. I humbly ask for your vote. I make one promise: to listen, to study, to work, and to vote for the citizens of District 38.
And the final statement from John Pfeiffer. John?
This is pretty exciting for me. Growing up, I spent a lot of time on the tractor, and I used to listen to Paul Harvey's Rest of the Story on this station every night there all summer long, and learned a lot from Mr. Harvey. So to be on this radio station now is pretty exciting for me, and sorry for all the people who have to look at me out there on TV. I think exciting kind of sums up how I feel about the state of Oklahoma. I think we have a lot of very exciting things going on in this state. I think we live in a golden age of agriculture where we have fewer people producing more products on less acres, and I think that kind of takes place all across District 38, and I think that's important, and I think it's important that we sustain that and we support these farmers, many of whom have been farming these lands for generations to continue to pursue their livelihood and their dreams. I think here in the state of Oklahoma, I think it's impressive that we have one of the strongest economies and one of the lowest unemployment rates in the nation. I think that the amount of natural resources we have both below and of our soils is impressive. We do have some problems, just like every state, a few rough corners that kind of need to be sanded off, education, roads, things like that, so we can continue to pave the way for the future. But I am just excited to be running, and I sincerely would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
And now concluding remarks from Nikki Schrader.
Well, I really wanted to go into the whole, I even hate to say political because that's just kind of a negative connotation, but I really wanted to represent you and my family because as I was looking at the different options I had for education for my children, it was very disheartening to see the downturn of the educational system in Oklahoma. And so, like a lot of moms, we can sit around and we can talk about it, and dads, and we can just discuss what we would like to see different and change and all this kind of stuff, or you can get in there and do something about it. And I was raised that if you're going to complain, you either do something about it or be quiet. And so I decided I was going to go do something about it. So I'd like to go down there. I'd like to do something about the educational issues. Our roads are horrific, and I would really, really love to get those straightened out. And the Obamacare issues, I hear about them from patients when I'm up doing chaplain work up at Integris. I hear about it from my husband and other doctors, and it's a nightmare. And the bad thing is a lot of us don't even know what's coming down the pike on so many levels. And so I really want to be a voice for the doctors and the nurses so that as they see issues coming and as they can let me know what's going on, I can be your voice. I can be your voice as a teacher because you don't have the time to do it. You need to be teaching those kids. And I can be a voice for the farmers as they also are out there working hard and the EPA is trying to get their hands grabbed in on things. So I'm living the same issues you are, and I would love your vote on June 24th, and I would love to represent District 38.
And the final closing statement from Harold LaValle.
Well, like the others, I want to thank everybody that was involved for putting this on. It's been very good. I do believe that I have life experiences to go down and make the decisions that need to be made. And in public education, I just retired recently out of that, so I was seeing firsthand what the testing and all, how it was affecting the kids as far as trying to stay in school or dropping out because they didn't want to mess with it. I do believe in traditional marriage. I've been married for 41 years and have 2 sons. One's in the military and the other one is in Ponca City. And I will work for strong representation of District 38.
Thank you, Harold. And if you would, join me in showing our appreciation for all these individuals being willing to serve District 38. And of course, for those of you listening and watching, if you reside in District 38, you need to get out June 24th and cast your vote among these 6 candidates. I want to thank everybody in the media panel for being here. J. Curtis Huckleberry, Rob Collins, John Herrick, Rebecca McKinney. Fine job of bouncing tonight. And tune in the next morning. We'll have good coverage from the News and Eagle to Williams Broadcasting to Chisholm Trail Broadcasting. Thanks to the candidates. Thanks to the audience on the Enid Television Network and also KGWA. Once again, thanks to our sponsors, Chisholm Trail Broadcasting, Williams Broadcasting, Eagle Marketing, the Enid Television Network, the City of Enid, Enid News and Eagle. I'm Frank Baker. Thanks for both watching and listening.